Hello there, everyone. I'm Storm Tracker meteorologist Rochelle J. Just want to give you an update as of Monday afternoon, September 9th, on what is now Tropical Storm Francine. So we're keeping an eye on Francine and a couple of other areas out in the tropics. Francine is the first tropical storm to form since August 12th, and that was, of course, Ernesto. The average date of the six-name storm formation is in late August, so we're running a little bit behind that average date, but we're also watching Francine to become our next hurricane, and the average date of the fourth hurricane in the Atlantic Basin is September 16th, so that would be next week. So here's a check on Tropical Storm Francine around 3 p.m. on Monday afternoon. We've got that tropical storm with 60-mile-an-hour winds. It's not moving very fast at about 5 miles an hour, and then we've got that pressure down to 996 millibars. As far as alerts go, we do have a few areas in northeastern Mexico with a tropical storm watch. We also do have a tropical storm watch for some areas of Louisiana as well as Texas. We have a hurricane watch for most of the Louisiana coastline, so that's where we'll be watching for the potential for the strongest winds from Francine. In those areas in the orange where we have the tropical storm watch, that's where we'll have those winds won't be as strong. So as it moves over the Gulf of Mexico, the far western Gulf of Mexico, it's anticipated to become our next hurricane within the next 24 or so hours. Right now, likely by Tuesday afternoon, becoming a Category 1 hurricane and continuing to strengthen until landfall. Right now, landfall looks like a pretty good bet somewhere along the Louisiana coastline. Exactly where? Not quite sure yet. And I do want to remind you that the cone that you're seeing here, this only shows projected locations, possible locations for the center of the storm. It doesn't show the entire size of the storm, just where the center could go, and we will have effects that reach away from the center. So even if you don't get an exact landfall in your area, you may still get maybe some fringe winds or something along those lines. So I want to compare two models of where Francine could go. They're in decent alignment. You may have heard of these two, the European model, that'll be the orange lines, and then the GFS, the American model, will be the blue lines. These lines are lines of equal pressure, and as we go through time heading into your Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening, you'll start to see a few more of those lines closer together. That's indicating that the storm is strengthening. So as we move along in time, you're starting to see more of those lines more densely packed together. So that's where we're talking about a strengthening storm. The more lines that are kind of circled around each other like this is indicating that the storm has strengthened. So by Wednesday evening, the GFS has a stronger storm than the European does, but they're not too far off as far as where we're going to be, or excuse me, the time that we're going to be watching for landfall of Francine. And the location that these two systems move Francine through, the areas for landfall, also very close together as well. So we'll be monitoring exactly where the storm will make landfall, and of course we'll have impacts well away from that center of the storm as well. One thing we're watching from the storm is going to be the potential for flash flooding. We have a level 2 out of 4 risk for flash flooding from far western Florida Panhandle through Mississippi, also much of the southern Louisiana coastline area, and then also into some areas of Texas as well. That moves a little bit farther inland, and that threat increases for flash flooding on Wednesday, covering most of the state of Louisiana as well as a good chunk of southern Mississippi in that level 3 out of 4, that moderate risk for exceeding the threshold for flash flooding. So this is going to be the area that we're watching for flash flooding from Francine, and we also have another risk for flash flooding that goes into Thursday, back down to that level 2 out of 4 risk and moving slightly northward, now going into some areas of Missouri as well as some areas of Tennessee and some small areas of Kentucky also included in that level 1 to 2 risk for flash flooding. Now, how much rain could we be talking with this system? Depends which model you're looking at. So the European does bring in, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain from Louisiana, Mississippi, as we head into some areas of Arkansas as well as Tennessee as well. Now, it's slightly different for the American model, but we do still see some of those big time numbers, the big time flooding same potential numbers, just maybe in a slightly different location. So we do have that risk for some areas to see 4, 5, 6+ inches of rain from this system as it moves through. Another thing that we're also going to keep an eye out for is the risk for storm surge. We have a storm surge watch as of Monday afternoon from far southeastern Texas through the Louisiana coastline, as well as coastal areas of Mississippi as well. As far as how much storm surge we could be talking, right now the highest forecast is up to 10 feet of storm surge, and that'll be for some areas of Louisiana, where we're going to be keeping the closest eye on that potential for where the center of Francine will move over. As you move farther away from that, the storm surge forecast does decrease substantially, but again does include Texas and Mississippi coastlines as well. Now, we're also going to keep an eye out, multifaceted, when we're looking at these storms. The threats are multifaceted. It's not just one thing. We also have the risk for some severe weather. Level 1 out of 5 risk, mainly for the threat of tornadoes, right along where we're keeping an eye on where Francine could make landfall. Now, that area does grow in coverage to also include some areas of Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama, again, mainly for that threat of tornadoes, and this is going to be for the day on Wednesday. And remember, Wednesday, that's also the day where we have the highest risk for flash flooding from this storm as well. So here's a look at Francine as of Monday afternoon around 3 p.m. You can see that storm here also does cover a good amount of area. So that's why I wanted to remind you also, don't focus on just the center of the storm, because we have this entire area of the Western Gulf that does have some impacts from Francine. Very warm waters under this storm that it's able to feed off of, but working against it is actually going to be something called wind shear. So you see anything in here just moved out to the east just a bit. Anything you're seeing in that teal color, that's where we have some unfavorable wind shear. And once we get into the blues and deep blues north of Francine, that's going to be causing some impacts. It's going to be fighting against Francine. Francine's going to be fighting against it. And storms, they do not like wind shear. That does not bode well for storm development and strengthening, which is good news as we're continuing to watch this for landfall a little bit later on this week. We also have some dry air that Francine is bumping up against, all indicated by this brown color here. So something else that tropical systems do not like. It does impact and slow or impede their strengthening process as well. Another good thing that we're keeping an eye out for. But the warm waters that Francine is moving over, definitely going to be helping with at least some strengthening over the next couple of days. So here's a look at where we stand as far as the Atlantic hurricane season so far. We've had 6 named storms, 3 hurricanes, and 1 major hurricane. On average, we would see 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes, but we're only in the early part of September, and we still have a lot of season to go. Here's a check on the list of names. We've got Francine already out there, and then the next few names, Gordon, Helene, and Isaac, would be the next 3 names on the list. And I do want to bring up the next couple of names because we also do have a couple of other areas that we're watching out in the open Atlantic, one with a medium chance for development and then another with a high chance for at least becoming a tropical depression within the next 7 days. So we're kind of starting to look a little bit more like peak season after a bit of a quiet stretch out in the Atlantic tropics. So if you're interested, you can find me on social media. I'm just about everywhere.